For years, I worked inside some of the most complex systems and high-pressure projects as an engineer, a business transformation lead, and a technical director. I've worked with global consultancies, government-backed programs, and major delivery partners. But I've also spent time working in places you might not expect. As a waitress, in shops, in kitchen, cleaning offices, you name it. And across all these years, in all these different roles, one truth keeps coming back. People want to do a good job. They want to make a difference. I don't know you, but I've never met anyone who didn't want to contribute to something bigger than themselves. And yet I kept seeing the same struggles over and over again. A cultural gap where the policies and values sounds great, but the day-to-day doesn't quite match. Leadership under so much pressure, there was no space left to lead. And systemic misalignment, where teams work really, really hard, but still don't see the impact. So no wonder so many people feel demotivated, invisible, exhausted. You see, the work itself was never the problem. It was everything around it. The culture, the pressure, the disconnection. That's what made good people feel like they were running uphill with no shoes on. I'm Natalia Sanz, an engineer, a system thinker, a workplace warrior, and the founder of Humanizing Our Workplaces. Humanizing Our Workplaces didn't start as a strategy paper. It started in the silence after meetings, in this whispered conversation behind closed doors. You know, these off-the-record chats where people finally said what they really felt. The experience of work have changed, and not always in ways that feel good or sustainable. And everyone feels it, not just leaders, not just employees, everyone. The modern workplace is full of contradictions. We say we value collaboration, but we don't teach people how to collaborate. We chase performance, but we ignore the human skills that actually makes performance possible. Skills like real listening, clear communication, healthy conflict management, empathy, inclusion. These aren't nice to have. They are what make work work. But over time, through stress, pressure, and lack of safe spaces, we just forget them. We start playing safe. We prioritize speed over space and kind of like a ticking boxes over building trust. And it's not just a theory, it's a lived experience. I remember one project I worked on where everyone was technically brilliant. We were spread across time zones. Imagine working long hours under constant pressure. And honestly, some of that tension was good. It was exciting. But even with all that expertise, we were still stuck. On paper, we were delivering. But no one really knew what for. No one was sure who was doing what or who to talk to when things got messy. There wasn't a clear path to success or even a space to figure out together. Everything felt kind of like urgent. Emails went unanswered, and over time, people just disconnected from the purpose of it all. Some of them left, and I don't blame them. Because it wasn't the work itself that wore the people down. It was everything around it. In my own research and a recent survey I ran, the top frustrations were not about pay or long hour. They were about poor or inconsistent leadership. They were about the lack of clarity and communication. They were about burnt out and feeling emotionally drained. They also were talking about toxic cultures and feeling invisible. Even more striking were the internal challenges people shared. Over half said they felt excluded, dismissed, or unseen at work. These are not individual flaws, they're signals. And the scariest part is that we started to normalize them. Disconnection is almost expected. Exhaustion is worn like a badge of honor. And silence is just become part of the culture. So why isn't anything changing? This is the part that gets me every time, because it's not that people don't care. It's that the system wasn't built for this. It makes it hard to show up with humanity, even when we want to. And to be fair, organizations do try. They run engagement surveys and create well-being programs, launch culture initiatives, but most of these efforts stay on the surface. They don't get deep enough to the system that shape how we work, how we lead, and how we grow. And things don't change because we've made the human stuff optional. Even in performance review, where priorities should be crystal clear. Communication, empathy, inclusion, all the stuff, they're often nice to have. They're optional objectives. And you know that. In other words, we've built a system that makes it hard to show up with humanity, even when people want to. And this is the thing. Until we treat humanity as a core infrastructure, as a business critical, nothing will truly change. So what if we did things differently? What if we stopped treating humanity and performance as opposites and started designing workplaces where both could thrive? I would like you to imagine walking into a world that actually feels like you belong. Not because you squeeze yourself into a box, but because being you is part of what makes the team better. Where your voice is not just tolerated, it's invited. Where collaboration doesn't happen by accident, it's baked into how things run. Where the skills we're called soft are seen as strategic because they are. And this is not a utopian dream. We already know the ingredients: trust, clarity, belonging, connection. What we need is a practical way to bring them to life. And that's what humanizing our workplaces is all about. Not just talking about culture, but actually shaping it. Not just supporting people, but designing systems that don't wear them down in the first place. Because the essence is simple. Human connection is not a distraction from performance. It is the foundation of it. And it's not about fixing people, it's about fixing the environment we ask them to perform. When we design for clarity, care, and connection, people thrive. And when people thrive, performance does too. This is not rocket science. That's the shift. That's the spirit. And that's humanizing our workplaces. Thanks for being here, truly. And if any of this resonates, let's keep the conversation going.